Hey everyone, my name is Luke, and this is just a video about EoE. So my experience with Eosinophilic Esophagitis. I know there's probably many people out there that haven't heard of it, but if you're searching for this video and you come across this video, that means you're probably searching for, some knowledge about EoE or, some of my experiences with it and just what to do with it. So keep watching the video and stay tuned for part 2 of this or part 3. I don't know how many parts I'm going to do, but I want to make a bunch of videos all around EoE and how I dealt with it, my experience going through it, my experience of how I recovered from it, and also my experience of how I'm still, it's not fully recovered because I'm still ongoing with dealing with EoE. So stay tuned. So let's just talk a little bit about what EoE is. This is just a very simple summary of it. Eosinophilic esophagitis is basically like a buildup of these white blood cells called eosinophils found in your esophagus. So, it's caused by a lot of different things, but I would say the two most common things that you'll hear that people are suffering from EoE with is that they have GERD, so it's just like the stomach acid coming up and coming back up into the esophagus, and secondly, just it could be caused by food allergies. So those are the two most common things that EoE is caused by. So mine specifically is, I think it's kind of caused by both of those. I definitely notice that when I have certain foods and maybe I don't take these anti-acid pills, that the stomach acid will come up and I'll start getting heartburn, and that is definitely a cause of EoE. And secondly, for me, after a long journey of discovering, when I have dairy, that is another thing that causes a bunch of inflammation in the throat. And what it looks like is, I'll get into kind of more about that later, but I'm just here to explain my story and just how it started and where I'm at right now. And I'll be making more videos in detail about different sections of my story. For example, like what the scope is all about and maybe how to prepare for that and whatnot. And just to give a little bit of clarity as well, I want to do a lot on how to eat with EoE. So if you're a parent and your kids are going through it, because it's very common with kids, is that just stay tuned for some of the videos. Subscribe to this channel because I will be coming out with more videos of how I survived as a firefighter. When I was diagnosed with this autoimmune disease, EoE, I actually just started my career in firefighting, and so it just goes to show you that you can do it. It is possible to get through it, and I'm here to help you get through it. So let's talk about my story. I would say that it's probably been going on for, I think about two years now. So let's just backtrack 2 years ago. I was in Palm Springs at the time, and I first started kind of noticing it. I remember I was eating this big plate of nachos, and I just started noticing that as I was eating the nachos, things just started to really get, it just started going down a lot slower. And I was like, I didn't really think about it because in my experience with EoE, it was a very big gradual change. It wasn't just all of a sudden I started, not being able to swallow food and whatnot. So it really started, I started noticing it then, and I was eating ice cream then in Palm Springs, and I was just things were starting to feel off. A little background of myself growing up, in the past, let's just say 5 years or so, I've been eating a lot of dairy products. So a lot of time with my wife and I on Friday nights, not my wife, but me, I'd be getting pizza and ice cream. So we kind of celebrated our Fridays by watching a movie, and I would eat, a whole pizza, and I would usually have a bowl of ice cream. And I was doing that quite a bit, which obviously is not healthy in general, but that's just what I did. So my dairy consumption was quite a bit, as well as the protein powders, because if you're following this channel, I do a lot of workout stuff, and I've been training for many years, and a lot of the protein that you buy has dairy in it, whether it's just kind of whey itself or some sort of form of casein. And actually, to a big misconception a lot of the time with EoE is that if you have a dairy allergy, a lot of the time it's the dairy protein. It's not like kind of like the lactose. So if you see something that's lactose free, that might be great for people that are lactose intolerant, but it doesn't really help if you have EoE, and that's just my circumstance, and I think that is also very common. So as we were coming back from Palm Springs there, I remember stopping again at Azteca's, and we had a big burrito or enchilada or something. I remember the same thing. I was just eating, and they were just slower going down. I'd swallow food and it would just take its time going down. And I really started to notice that this isn't right. This isn't normal. I don't really know what's going on. And yeah, again, things were just starting to kind of make me think a little bit. Fast forward a little bit, I was visiting my parents. And at that time, I was starting to get a lot more frustrated with food. And I remember going out fishing with my dad and my brother, and I couldn't eat anything. Like, nothing I was eating was going down. And I started to notice that if I had certain things, they would get stuck in my throat for a while. Like, sometimes, they wouldn't be going, food would get stuck in my throat maybe for, let's just say 5 minutes. And it felt like forever that it would go down. I wasn't necessarily like choking on anything at that point, but just things weren't going very well. Then in the solution to that, because I started realizing that, okay, I'm having a really hard time with solid food. So I was like, I'm going to be out on the water fishing. So I ended up buying a bunch of those little Boost things. And the problem with those is that, and I didn't know this at the time, but or I didn't know the problem that I had, but those Boosts are just loaded with sugar, and they're loaded with dairy, a lot of them. And I'm sure you can get dairy-free ones, and I have done that later on in this story, but they tasted really gross, and they weren't that energy. They didn't give you a lot of energy. They're just filled with sugar. So you just drink them, and great, they taste sweet like vanilla or chocolate or whatever. But then it's just basically just drinking a sugar drink that literally does nothing nutritionally for you. So that was that. So as things progressed and I didn't really know what was going on, I started to try to find solutions, because at this point I wasn't eating solid food, and I'm trying to remember, I guess, the timeline of everything, but there was no solid food in my diet. So I actually ended up going to a registered massage therapist and seeing if maybe it was like some spasm in my throat or something like that. And I didn't know. I had no idea what was causing this. And so I got a massage on like kind of my neck, and that really didn't help anything, because that had nothing to do with the problem. But so that was, again, frustrating, and I was starting to get really worried about what was going on, because at this point I wasn't eating solid food. I think I would try every once in a while, and things would just get stuck, and it was awful, and I'll get to that in a little bit too. So the massage didn't work. Nothing's really working. I went and visited my doctor, and I explained a bit about what was happening. So he ended up getting me a specialist appointment with a gastroenterologist. And so with that, they're just, they're a specialist, and in Canada here, you don't get to go and see them usually right away. So I had to wait quite a while before I was actually able to see a specialist, and this specific one. And so it was going to be a long time, and I was like, oh shoot, still, what do I do? Because I can't eat food. And at this point, I'm starting to lose weight, because again, I'm frustrated about it. Nothing's working, so I'm getting pretty down on myself, and I'm just not really eating right. And I was trying to survive and drink some Boosts, and training kind of stopped because I didn't know how to train when I couldn't eat any food. It was like, what's the point, right? And so I was basically just making protein shakes of this whey protein that every other gym goer usually does, and it actually was making the problem worse that I didn't know. So I was having, you know, Greek yogurt, I was having, you know, milk, and I was just loading it with dairy because dairy is such an easy and cheap option to boost your calories and kind of get that protein, get that calories in. So, but again, didn't know it was actually making everything worse this whole time. So thanks for watching part 1 of this series about EoE, so Eosinophilic Esophagitis. Yeah, I hope you liked the video. There's going to be part 2 coming out where I talk about my experience of when I actually had the first food impaction. So I had, you know, a piece of this peach that ended up getting stuck in my esophagus for like 18 hours. And so I actually ended up going to emergency for that. Then I talk about a little bit about my experience when I was going into firefighting. So I ended up losing 47 pounds, going from 215 to 168. So I was super unhealthy when I started. As well, in the video, I ended up talking about my first scope, so my first biopsy, and just a little bit about the experience about that, and how it wasn't really the best experience ever. And so yeah, if you like the video, please subscribe to the channel. Please turn on the bell notifications so then you know that the second video, and I think potentially I'll even have actually 3 more videos after this one, so it might be a 4-part series, just because the videos are quite long and the story is quite long. So if you like this video, please also give a thumbs up, and as well, you know, share it with someone who's potentially going through EoE. You know, if this can give them a little bit of hope, that's honestly my goal with this whole thing. And I just want to shed a little bit of light about my experience with it and how I went through it and how I actually have really combated it and been successful actually living with it. So stay tuned for the next series, and we'll see you next time.